today we will learn light reflection and refraction from the physics portion. Okay. Now, when we enter a dark room, what happened to us? We are not able to see anything. The surrounding in the room is dark, right? But once you switch on the bulb, the light, what happened? You're able to see everything in the room, in the surrounding. Why? Because the bulb, when you switch on, it emits light, and light is a form of energy which gives a sensation of sight to us. So before we study the reflections of light, some of the important terms that we need to understand. Okay, and some of the important terms I have written down here. A ray of light. Light travels in a straight line. The path traveled by light is represented or traced by a straight line. One such light is known as a ray of light. For example, one such ray, I will draw here since there is no space. This is called a ray of light. Okay, this symbol represents a ray of light. Now, a beam of light. A group of light rays traveling together is called a beam of light. Beam of light may be diverging, converging, or parallel. Okay, if you look at this example A, you see that this is called diverging. Okay, the light starts from this point of source and it diverges in the possible directions. Number B, this is diverging. Okay, if you look at the number B here, diagram, converging. So the light rays are converging at one point. Okay, so this type of ray is called converging. And number C, you see parallel beam of rays. Okay, if a group of light rays travel together parallel to each other in the same directions, we call this a beam of parallel rays. So we have three different type of light rays here. Beam of light, which is diverging, converging, and the parallel. Now, the reflection of light. So the definitions I have written here. When the light traveling in a medium falls on a surface, then it returns back in the same medium. This is known as reflection. Or reflection is the phenomenon of bouncing of light in the same medium in which it was traveling when it falls on a surface. The simple way to understand the reflection of light is that, see, every object in our surrounding is a reflector of light. Okay, so when the light, I'll give you an example. When the light ray comes from its source, let's say the bulbs which emits light or the light ray which comes from the sunlight, when it falls on every object in the surrounding, it reflects light. Every object is a reflector of light. It depends on the object, okay, how much it reflects light. For a very smooth surface like a mirror, it's very smooth and shiny. So what happened? The maximum amount of light it reflects. But the other object, as we compare, like the wall, tables, or the trees, some amount of the light is absorbed and the rest are reflect. Okay, so in simple way to understand is that reflection is simple, the bouncing back of the light ray. Reflection is the phenomenon of bouncing of the light in the same medium in which it was traveling. It means there is an object. Let's take AB is an object. Okay, a light ray which comes from its source, any source, let's say it comes here. This is a medium in which a light is traveling. So after hitting this object, it bounces back, reflect in the same medium where it came. So it came, hits this object, and the object reflects the light, bounce the light, and it goes back in the same medium. So this is what the definition is trying to say. So this phenomenon of bouncing back the light in the same medium where it came from is known as the reflection of light. So the simple answer we write is that define reflection. So in a simple way is that the bouncing back of the light ray is known as reflection. Now we will learn about the two types of reflections. There are two types of reflections. One is regular reflection. Second is irregular or diffuse reflection. So what is the regular reflection? See, let's take an example. This is a reflecting surface, okay? Let's take any example of a reflecting surface or any object. When a beam of parallel rays falls on this surface, this is the ray which falls on this reflecting surface. After reflection, this is the reflected ray. After reflection, all the reflected rays goes parallel. So these type of reflections we call it the regular reflections, and this is due to the surface, reflecting surface. Okay, if the reflecting surface is very smooth like a mirror, okay, a mirror is a example of a smooth reflecting surface. Now the beam of parallel will reflect parallel. So this type of reflection is known as the regular reflections. Now all the objects around us are not smooth as the mirror, right? So there are some objects which are rough. So irregular or diffuse reflection. Now look at this type of reflection. Now the reflecting surface, if it is not smooth, then it might appear something like this. So when a beam of parallel rays falls on this reflecting surface, what happened here? The reflected rays reflect with different direction here. In another way, diffuse or scatter or irregular. So the definition is very simple. When a beam of parallel rays falls on a reflecting surface, after reflection, it diffuse or scatter or disperse. Okay. So these type of reflection is known as irregular or diffuse. See here, when the rays comes, it is parallel, but after reflection, when it goes, it is no longer a parallel. It is scattered everywhere, diffuse. So this type of reflection is known as the irregular or diffuse. And why it is? Due to the roughness of the reflecting surface. Here it is very smooth, so it goes parallel. Here it is not smooth, so the reflected ray are no longer parallel. The simple definition is regular reflections when a beam of parallel rays falls on a reflecting surface and after reflection it goes parallel. Irregular or diffuse reflection, very simple. When a beam of parallel rays falls on the reflecting surface, after reflections it gets diffused or scattered. It's known as the irregular reflection. Now, some of the important terms which are related to reflections is very important that you need to remember. Okay. Incident ray, reflected ray, point of incidence, normal, angle of incidence, angle of reflection, and the pole. So these are all the important terms which are related to the reflection. Now we'll see all these terms one by one. Okay. Now, incident ray. What is an incident ray? Let's take an example of a reflecting surface. Let's say this is a mirror, plain mirror. Okay. This is a plain mirror. Okay. Now, if a ray of light comes and falls on this mirror, this ray which comes and falls, we call it incident ray. Okay, this is incident ray. Obviously, we know that this light ray is going to bounce, which means it's going to be reflect, right? So, the light ray which gets bounced, we call this light ray reflected ray. Okay? Incident ray, reflected ray. The point of incidence. What is the point of incidence? The point on the reflecting surface in which this incidence ray falls. This point is known as the point of incidence. So this particular point on the reflecting surface where this incidence ray comes and falls, this point is known as the point of incidence. Okay, this is our third terms related to reflection. The next is normal. What is a normal? A normal is an imaginary straight line perpendicular drawn from the point of incidence on the reflecting surface. That means we are going to draw a very straight line from this point of incidence vertically upwards, which is 90-degree here. Okay, a straight line we are going to draw. This is an imaginary line which is drawn vertically from the reflecting surface. From which point? From the point of incidence. This straight line drawn is known as the normal. It is represented by a letter N. Okay. So we have our normal here. Now the angle of incidence. What is an angle of incidence? It is an angle which is formed by the incidence ray with the normal. So this is the incident ray which comes and falls on this point of incidence, and it makes an angle with the normal. So this is represented by the small letter I. So this angle is known as the angle of incidence. Okay. So the definition is very simple. You can write it. The angle made by the incidence ray with the normal, which is known as the angle of incidence. This is angle of incidence. Now our next term is angle of reflection. So very simple again. The incident ray, after falling on this surface, is going to reflect. After reflections, it also make an angle with the normal. So the angle formed by the reflected ray towards the normal is known as the angle of reflection. It is denoted by the small letter R. So this is angle of incidence, and this side is angle of reflection. Very easy. And next we have pole. Pole is the center of the mirror or a reflecting surface. So if this is a mirror, let's take an example of plane mirror, M and N. Okay, the center of the mirror we call it pole. Okay, so we'll study this in the next more about the pole. Okay, for now we will recap what we have learned. We have learned about the incident ray, reflected ray, point of incidence, normal, angle of incidence, angle of reflections. One more time, this ray which comes and falls on the reflecting surface is the incident ray. After falling, bounce back, we call it reflected ray. A very straight line drawn from the point of incidence is known as the normal. Okay, and this angle which is formed by the incident ray is the angle of incidence, and this is the angle which is formed by the reflected ray, we call it the angle of reflection. It's very easy. Okay, and the point of incidence, the point on the mirror or the reflecting surface where the incidence ray falls, this is a point of incidence. Now we will learn about the two laws of reflection. Now there are two laws of reflection. Okay, laws of reflection. The two laws of reflection which are followed by the light ray. I will write it down here. The first law of reflection is the incident ray. At the same time, I will show you in the diagram also. This is the incident ray. Then we have the reflected ray. This is the reflected ray, and the normal. This is the normal. All lie in the same plane. Okay, what does it mean? This is normal. It means that the incident ray, the reflected ray, and the normals all are on the same plane. Plane is the aperture. Means this is, for example, this is a plane mirror. So the front part of the mirror where there is a glass, where is the reflecting surface. Okay, and the backside part of the mirror is colored with silver so that it will protect the light from passing through. Right. So there is a back part of the light mirror, and this is the front part. The front part where there is a glass, where there is a reflecting surface is there. This is called the aperture, and this is also known as the plane. So as per the first law, it says that everything will be on the same plane, means on the same side. So incident, if you look at this diagram, you will see that incident ray is on the plane side, normal is on the plane side, and the reflected ray is on the plane side. So it will always be like this, okay? The incident ray, the reflected ray, and the normals all lie in the same plane. Now the second law says that the angle of incidence is always, it will be always equal to the angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of refraction. Angle I equal to angle R, which means this angle will be always equal to this angle. Angle I equal to angle R, which means if this angle is 30 degree, then this angle also will be 30 degree. If this angle is 40, then this also will be 40. It will be always be equal. So the second law says the angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of reflection, irrespective of what type of reflection. Just now, 1 minute before, we study about the two types of reflection, okay? Regular and the irregular. So these two laws is followed by the light ray. Either it is regular or irregular, or it's a concave mirror, convex mirror, plane mirror. Irrespective of whatever type of reflections, the light will always be followed these rules. It is valid for all the types of reflection, okay? So for today we'll learn up to the two laws of reflections. In the next class we'll continue about the types of mirror.
Stay home, stay safe, do it for self, live for family, live for India, let's make a change of COVID-19. हम होंगे कामयाब। जय हिंद।